Did you know that you don't really need to study English to be fluent in it? I mean, not unless you are learning English for academic purposes. At a more advanced level, then you need to really study English. But if you're just learning English for communication or communicating with other people, then you don't really need to study English that much. And that's why in this video, I'm going to share with you tips that you can use to be fluent in English without really studying. But before I get into the video, let me share a bit of my backstory of how I really got fluent. I don't know if I've ever said this on camera before, but I am Kenyan and I've never really been to an English speaking country yet. So growing up, I studied English all the way from elementary to high school and right now at college level. And I wouldn't really say that studying English at school is what really made me speak fluently. Most of the time, we study English as a subject. We study it for academic purposes and not really to get fluent in it or speak it. And if I'm being really honest, all my school years until high school, I couldn't really stand in front of a class and deliver a speech or talk about a concept in front of a class without switching to Swahili, which is the national language. And I would say that about 90% of the students studying English at school are not really confident that they can stand in front of a class and talk in English for a whole 3 hours. Despite the fact that they've been studying English at school, I wasn't really confident in my speaking skills. So when I got to campus, I really wanted to be fluent in English and speak myself out and express myself out without being afraid that I'm gonna mess up some words. So that is when I decided to start my journey of becoming fluent and speaking fluently in English. And I'm gonna share with you the tips that I applied to help me speak like I'm speaking to you right now, which I believe is more fluent than I used to speak 3 years ago. And some of my friends still can't believe that I speak English the way I do. 2 days ago, we were talking with my friend and I've never really sent a voice note talking about something. We usually just text each other. We were talking about nothing. She's taking nothing and she was asking me questions. So I was like, if I was to go in that direction of taking nothing, then I'd really dive into midwifery. And she was like, so I sent her a voice note saying that and she was like, wait a minute, how are you speaking? And I was like, how am I speaking? And she was like, the accent. Anyways, let's get in the video. Not only am I going to give you the tips that will help you speak fluently in English, but also how to speak English elegantly. I mean, English is an elegant language and it should be spoken with elegancy. That's why today's video is divided into 2 sections. The first section is tips to be fluent without studying. The second section is tips to be elegant while speaking. So let's start with the first tip. This is a technique I call repetitive listening. Listening to something repetitively means listening to that thing continuously again and again and again on repeat. Have you ever wondered how when babies are born, they don't know how to speak anything at all, but after 7 years, they can speak and communicate with the people around them fluently? Well, that's because they listen repetitively to what the people around them are saying and how they are communicating. They tend to emulate and copy the language. So for you to learn to speak fluently using this technique, you need to have the curiosity, the urge, and the interest just like a baby has to learning the language of the people that surrounds them. You need to have the interest that pushes you to want to learn more of the language. So in this case, I want to decide on how you define fluency. Whichever way you define fluency, this formula will serve you. So just to help you choose on what you are gonna listen to, I made a list of podcasts that can really help you indulge in the language. I divided the podcast into 2 categories. One with the British accent, the second one is with American accent. So the first podcast is Love Life with Matthew Hussein. It's a podcast that mainly talk about relationships. Matthew is British and he talks in a British accent. It's a relatively interesting topic. The second podcast is On Purpose by Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty has a British accent, though it's kind of mix of British and American accent. This podcast can really help you build up your fluency in a British accent. The next group of podcasts is on the American accent, and the first podcast is Speak English with Tiffany. So she's an English teacher and she's American. The next podcast is The Mama's Den. This is the podcast that I listen to every single morning to help me with my pronunciation. So if you want to dive into that American fluency, then you gotta try this podcast. So what you're gonna do is that you are gonna listen to either of the chosen podcasts every single morning or night according to your schedule. Ensure you listen to 2 episodes of the pod. So for the first week, I just want you to listen to the language, listen to how they communicate, how they pronounce words, and how they imply their intonation. The first week, just listen. Here's what you're gonna do in the second week. So in the second week, I want you to listen and speak. Listen and exercise your muscles and speak at the same time. Try implying and using the vocabulary that you learned in the podcast. This technique is really important in your fluency journey because the more you listen again and again to the language, you get exposed to new vocabulary. And when you get exposed to new vocabulary, you learn words that you can use to express yourself fully. You know, sometimes you really want to express yourself in English, but you don't really know the words to use to say them. This technique also helps you familiarize with the language. When you start learning a language, it's kind of strange. I'm trying to learn French right now, and it's strange to me because it's a new language. I'm not used to listening to it. Right now, I only know 2 words. Bonjour, and the other one is je m'appelle. I think it means my name is or I am. At this stage, French is still strange to me. The first time you get introduced to the language, it's really strange to you, and the only thing you can do to familiarize with the language is to listen to it again and again and again until it becomes familiar. So now that you've exposed yourself to the language and you've learned a couple of vocabularies, the second step is to surround yourself with the language. How do you surround yourself with the language? The first way to surround yourself with the language is by talking to yourself. I'm really good at talking to myself in English. When you talk to yourself, you kind of build some confidence within you because there's nobody around to judge you. It makes you feel free and comfortable, and it also exercises your muscles. I want you to normalize using English in your daily routines. The third tip is to binge watch. What I mean by binge watching is like excessively indulging in a movie or a series in your free time or during the weekends. Learn the storyline of the movie. Be a part of the story. Choose your favorite character in a movie and just emulate how they're speaking and how they express themselves in English. One show I really used to binge watch when I started my fluency journey was the show Blackish, and I really fell in love with this character, Rainbow. I just really loved how she expressed herself in English and like how her facials just like blended with her words. And have you ever heard someone speak English and you're like, oh my god, don't stop speaking? That is how I was with that character. If you're still not confident that you are gonna understand the storyline fully, you can use the subtitles, but don't really depend on the subtitles. This tip takes me to my next tip, that is mimicking. Mimicking is a really strong tip to implement when you want to speak fluently. Mimicking is when you copy a native speaker exactly how they're speaking. Their pronunciation, their intonation, where they breathe, you breathe exactly how they're speaking. Here's how you're gonna do it. You're gonna download a video of a native speaker speaking, let's say a 30-second video or just a 15-second video. Write the words they're saying down on a piece of paper, play the video, and while they're speaking, you speak with them at the same time, simultaneously. And that's it on the tips sections. We talked about repetitive listening, we've talked about surrounding yourself with English, we've talked about binge watching, we've talked about mimicking, and that has nothing to do with studying. So get into it. The next section of this video is how to be elegant while speaking. Have you ever heard someone speak and you're like, oh my god, just stop speaking? Because in as much as they speak in English, it is not elegant, and it doesn't really cost anything to be elegant in your speech. I would urge you to include these phrases in your daily speech to sound elegant. The first phrase is pardon me. When someone is speaking to you and you didn't quite get what they said and you want them to repeat, instead of saying say pardon me. The next phrase is excuse me. Don't just scream someone's name. If you're in a room that is full of people and you want someone's attention, say, excuse me. The next phrase is I am sorry. I am sorry is a huge word that not everyone likes to say. When you wrong someone, be apologetic about it. Sometimes someone is not mad that you wronged them. Sometimes they're mad that you wronged them and you didn't even have the urge to apologize. Next word is thank you. Thank you is a phrase used to appreciate. When someone does you something good, always appreciate. The last phrase is please. Please is a phrase used when you're requesting for something. Would you please do me this? Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this video. If you like the video, ensure you subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and like the video so you help the community and the channel grow. Let's catch up in my next video. Bye.